Cookie Crew was the first time I did a full album outside of, just working with Stetsasonic for a full album. And that was a lot of fun because, we did a lot, we did some in New York and we did some in London.
Right.
So that was a whole lot of fun.
Now, was that your first time going overseas, or you had already done?
No. Our Stetsasonics' first tour was overseas. God bless the dead. Dave Funkenklein took us overseas. That's the first time we ever even did anything called a tour. That wasn't a one-off. That was actually city to city and performing. Our first tour was overseas. So I always liken us. I mean, it's not really a comparison because they're so huge, right? But I always liken us to the Beatles of a story. I liken us to a story I heard from the Beatles. And I heard from the Beatles that they just really went to, even though we never got booed, I will say that, but they went to Liverpool, because they're from there, and they performed all around there to get all the booze out, to get all the kinks out, to get all the everything out. And by the time they performed in London for the first time, they were good. And even though we never got booed, going overseas for our first tour really helped us shape what would become one of the best stage shows in rap. Because we went overseas and a few things happened. One, there's no time constraints. So there's no hall, union, you got to get off stage, all of that. To this day, Chuck D says the best show that he ever saw in his life was Stetsasonic in Amsterdam at the Paradiso, because we did 2 hours straight.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And what we did is we did On Fire. We In Full Gear wasn't all the way out, a couple of singles, but we did the whole In Full Gear because we had already had the album, it wasn't finished. And then we just started doing street routines and all of that. We just stayed on stage. So we got a chance to work out a whole lot of stuff to figure out if an intro works, if an intro doesn't work, where to bring wise in, where to not bring them in, where to bring a scratch in, where to not bring a scratch in. All of that stuff we learned because we got a chance to go overseas and cut our teeth. And that's so crazy. By the time we came back and did the first tour in America, which I think was Bigger and Deffer. Yeah, because we did Def Jam tour after. So I think it was Bigger and Deffer first, which was, a huge tour with LL Cool J and Houdini headlining. We were ready. We were ready. We figured it out, and that's why to this day, I do it with Stetsasonic, but I also do artist development. Part of my artist development package is stage. I always tell artists, just find out how many minutes you have. It's the dumbest thing in the world if you tell me how many songs, because I can fit 10 songs in 5 minutes if that's what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? Figure out how many minutes you got, and then we'll figure out what the show is. And that's what we learned overseas. So if they told us you the opening act, you only got 10 minutes, we still killed it. You know what I mean? It didn't matter because we knew, okay, we got 10 minutes. What are we going to do? We'll come out to this. We'll do a verse of this. Why does it come out? We do the, we'll figure it out. But that's the way we put it together.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. So what were those early shows in Europe like compared to then going back and doing shows in America? Were they bigger size? Were they smaller? Was it?
No, some of the European shows were big too. We had not yet did Wembley and stuff like that. So we were doing like some more like Paradiso, like those kind of things. The first tour in America was big because we basically did, it wasn't stadiums, but it was big places, the Madison Square Garden, the Omni in Atlanta.
So like arenas.
Yeah, arenas. That's what. Yeah. So we did arenas. So yeah, it was different in size, but overseas it was a lot warmer and a lot more personal because I never forget going overseas and somebody walking up to one of the band members and telling them to sign his jacket. And we were like, sign your jacket? Like, you know, this is New York dudes. You don't write on our clothes. You don't even step on our sneakers. And you saying sign jacket. And then I remember one time we arrived in London once. And when we getting off the tour bus, people knew every member of the band. Which, you know, in America, it was a little different than that because they kind of knew the name Stetsasonic. For whatever reason, I stood out, and there might have been one other standout. But like if DB or one of them that they hardly ever see was to walk past them, they wouldn't know who they were. But in London, they knew all of us. So that was just, you know, that was very interesting.
Well, obviously I'm not a rapper or an artist in that regard, but why over time, why do you think that difference exists?
I think the way Europeans approach music, I'm not clear and not totally focused on them now, right? Because we've done a few things overseas, but you know, no, we haven't done touring overseas in time. And, you know, now Drake could go overseas and sell out. So that's different. But I think that they, at least then, they took music on another note. You know, Europe had New Music Express as a newspaper magazine. They had like all of these things where they really were into music. America was a little different because the music magazine ended up being Billboard, which is charts, right? New Music Express had charts, but the chart was in the back.
Right.
You know, it wasn't a magazine full of charts, right? You know, and they had quite a few others overseas as well. So it was different. They seem to absorb the music in a different way. And that probably came from the stuff that they absorbed pre-rap, you know,
Right.
because you got people like Jimi Hendrix and some others that basically loved it overseas and really didn't like it in the States at all. You know, Tina Turner, like, you know, that didn't like it because the reception is different because they taking a musician, you know, as himself. You know, they just respecting you for who you are. They're not, you know, in America, I don't know, maybe, you know, because I don't get into the conspiracies and none of that, but, you know, it's more business, it feels like. It just feels like in America, it's more business. Oh, are we gonna fill these seats? Are we gonna? And then the music, it means something to us, but every other person, it just seems like it's a line item. Whereas overseas, everybody took the music serious. You know, the difference. I mean, you know, think of Tim Westwood versus. And I'm not putting him up against like Lady B or Mr. Magic or Pink House, God bless the dead, from Chicago, because you know those are strictly hip hop DJs. But think of Tim Westwood versus somebody else that would have been his American counterpart at that time. You know, he is really accepting who we are, trying to have those conversations with us, traveling around London with us, all of that. You know, so, yeah.
It's a crazy difference. But even beyond music, obviously James Baldwin did the same thing. You know, he felt the same way.
Yeah, it's the way that they see art, I think. And you probably will have to talk to somebody overseas to figure out like how, you know, why do you guys see art in such a great light? You know what I mean? Because in this country, it's like, yeah, there are a lot of people that see art in a great light. There's great concerts, great music venues, great galleries. Like, you know, I'm not going to say that art doesn't, you know, I'm from New York. So of course art exists, but it would be interesting to talk to somebody overseas and say, you know, why do you guys kind of ingest it this way? You know?
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Now, the other thing that was going on at this point in your career that I was always intrigued by is that Stetsasonic, obviously, I love and cherish you guys, but you guys weren't selling millions of albums at the time.
Right.
Rap wasn't even that huge. There were definitely, you know, we had a lot of success with Sugar Hill Gang and Fat Boys and Curtis Blow, et cetera, LL, Beastie Boys, whatever. But it wasn't like this huge industry yet.
Right.
But a group like Stetsasonic getting on the Lean On Me soundtrack through Warner Brothers, was that a Tommy Boy thing? Was that
was a Tommy Boy thing. That was actually Laura Hines. Oh, not really sure. I'm not sure if it was Laura. It was definitely one of our publicists. So it was either Laura Hines, who was Tommy Boy's in-house publicist, or Bill Adler, who was the Rush publicist. I'm not really sure which one, but it was that type of thing. And they tried to plug us wherever they could. You know what I mean? Like, the cool thing about Stetsasonic is whenever something came up like that has some kind of meaning, you know, they would always point to us, you know, and say, hey, you know, you guys can do that. You know, you guys, because it's our heart. You know, we care about people, and we've always done that, and we've tried to express that through our music as well. You know, what wasn't known as a message group in particular, I think we had some standouts. We had Freedom of Death. We had a few things that kind of show where we was in our head, right? And so when those particular types of opportunities came up, they would definitely try to get us involved.
Yeah, because that, as I was following your guys' career back then, it just amazed me. And again, I barely knew anything about anything in the music industry. I was just trying to understand it. And I knew obviously LL was selling a lot of records, Houdini had sold, Run DMC had sold.
Right.
And then to see you producing all these different things and being on soundtracks, I was like, man, that's really impressive, because you didn't have the platinum plaques. So
yeah, I mean, I think notable is probably the best thing for it. I feel the same way now. You know what I mean? It's not a cash cow. You know, I make money in music. It's not a cash cow. You know what I mean? But definitely notable. You know, I love it. And so I try to express the love for it. And I do my best in most cases to protect hip hop as far as I can. I think that part gives us that thing, like the thing that, oh, they're not the million seller, but we know them, we love them, that kind of thing. Because we've come in, and even to this day, we've come in as protectors of the music and the culture. You know what I mean? There's some things Prince Paul did that might have not sold a lot, but were very, very notable. You know, and you know, most notably, most things didn't sell like De La Soul sold, but he did things that people still remember, and that's because there's some conservationists in us. You know, to you know, that years later, you down the line, you begin to start picking up these little pieces of art that we did and say, hey, man, you know, this is really cool. Like, one of the things that happened to us when we did the Netherlands a couple of years ago, I think we did it right pre-COVID, is we went to the Netherlands and we performed. Great show, but we met all of these people that got into hip hop based on Blood, Sweat, and No Tears. And so they got into it based on Blood, Sweat, and No Tears. And then they went back and found Info Gear and On Fire. So that was just like interesting to us because, you know, we had nominal success with Blood, Sweat, and No Tears, but it wasn't the same impact as the debut album, which was just impactful because it was debut. And then Info Gear because that one sold the most. So, you know, Blood, Sweat, and No Tears, at least in our heads, not now, but at least in our heads at that time, it was the cool down of the exercise. You're still on the treadmill, but it's slowing down. You know what I mean? So, so to hear some of the love that we got for Blood, Sweat, No Tears was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. But again, I think that comes from this conservationist attitude of the band. We're going to preserve this thing. We're going to keep it as pure as we know how to do it. And we're going to do our thing regardless. If that means $1 million, it means it. If it means $1, it means it, but we're still going to do it.
Well, I think that's why people love and respect you guys till today. So
I think so too. I think so too.
Because the thing I know for myself, I got into rap, and when I started listening to it, as you're well aware, in the mid 80s, you were only into rap if you loved it, because there was no other.
Right, exactly.
And especially for me as a fan, like I wasn't in New York, so I just was drawn to the music and I loved it. And then when all the other elements of my love and appreciation for it developed, it meant so much to me, and that's why it still does today. But that's
right.
But that's because I love it. First and foremost.
I mean, that's what it is, man. And I think that there's a few of us that do, man. You know, it's a few of us still love it.
In the beginning, hip-hop was ruled by the East Coast. Then the West Coast rose to prominence, thanks to gangster rap.
Straight out of Compton, crazy motherfucker named Ice Cube.
Hip-hop changed the world. Gangster rap changed the narrative.
I'm representing for the gangsters all across the world.
And then changed the world again.
Cause I'll come and take your life away.
The history of gangster rap features unheard stories, unseen photos and documents, all with exclusive interviews from the founders and players who shaped gangster rap.
I think a real gangster rapper has to scare you a little bit.
The history of gangster rap, written by veteran rap journalist Soren Baker. In stores now.
Yo, what up? This is DJ Quick. Be sure to pick up my homeboy Soren Baker's book, The History of Gangster Rap, if you really want to know what we do.